You feel humiliated? Your secrets have been exposed. Your double life is over. The world, and I mean the entire world, knows who you are and what you did. You will forever be known as a repulsive coward who hid behind a mask of evil. The devil can keep you company in your prison cell as he gnaws away at whatever soul you have left, at whatever life you have left. It brings me great satisfaction to see you in your assigned orange jumpsuit, powerless and handcuffed in all aspects of your already miserable life. You hid in plain sight, but you are now visible for everyone to despise, loathe, and abhor. You are finally getting what you deserved all along. Understand, D'Angelo, there's not a prayer strong enough to save you. Your Honor, once again, thank you for allowing me to share how D'Angelo's burnt soul has invaded my life. Though I have found my way to a happy and safe life once again, D'Angelo deserves his sentence of life without parole in the most dark and lonely containment. If I had my way, D'Angelo would only be provided our impact statements as reading material for the rest of his days. D'Angelo must not be allowed to ignore what he has done for as long as he breathes. For decades, he lived free in the same neighborhood that I lived in, as well as many others. He was free while each of his victims and their families lived in pain, often nearby. Who knows how many times I passed him in the grocery store or sat near him at a restaurant, oblivious to the fact that the rapist who took so much from me was only a few feet away. There are parts of me that spent more than 4 decades alone, entrapped in a virtual hell that D'Angelo sentenced me to in 1976, from which I could not escape. I used to wonder why I was chosen to be his victim. It used to keep me up at night. It was the only question I had for him. Why? What could I have done differently to create a different ending that night? It is only since his capture that I have found freedom from his evil. I'm forever grateful for the support I have received through love and caring of my family and friends, through therapy, meeting and sharing experiences with other survivors, support from the victim advocates, and reaching out to other victims of rape that have long kept their silence for fear of being ostracized. Standing here today, the knowledge that D'Angelo will spend the rest of his life in prison for his heinous acts has ended my dark journey so that I may begin a new one. So where will this new journey lead me? This experience has taught me the importance of supporting those that have been sexually assaulted. I spent years, decades really, feeling shame and guilt for what happened to me. And yet it wasn't my fault. It was something that was done to me, not because of me. Through this experience, I have learned how utterly important it is to be able to express out loud in some manner, whether verbally or in writing, that the shame and guilt belongs to the rapist, not the victim. Most importantly, saying it out loud reinforces that we did not deserve to be raped. We did nothing wrong, no matter what the circumstance. The sheer act of stating it out loud to others who understand and have had similar experiences is liberating in a way that most cannot comprehend. Today, right now, I start my new journey. I've received overwhelming support from so many people. It's time to pay it forward. I hope to provide support to those as so many have done for me. It truly has changed my life. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Joe, is anybody else wish to be heard as to that in charge?
Not as to that on charge, Your Honor.
All right, we're going to move on to count 15 at this time.
Yes, may we have a moment to transition?
Sure.
Thank you.
prepared to go forward?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very
We
good,
are.
thank you. Count 15, Mr. D'Angelo entered a guilty plea to the charge of kidnapping with intent to commit robbery of Jane Doe number 2, having occurred on April 2nd, 1977 in Sacramento County, violation of Penal Code Section 209. In addition, defendant admitted to the following uncharged acts: rape of Jane Doe number 2, having occurred on April 2nd, 1977 in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 261, robbery of Jane Doe number 2 and John Doe number 1, having occurred on April 2nd, 1977 in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 211, false imprisonment of Jane Doe number 2 and John Doe number 1, having occurred on April 2nd, 1977 in the County of Sacramento, violation of Penal Code Section 236. Does any victim or victim's family wish to be heard as to count 15 or any of the uncharged acts?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Carol Daly, and I'm here as a support person for Kathy Rogers, and she has asked me to read her statement. She is standing here with me today.
Very good.
D'Angelo was the ultimate predator, and I was unprepared for what was to occur on April 2nd, 1977, as D'Angelo had honed his skills by this time. This man stalked me, knew my routine, the layout of my house, and even my dog, and I never knew. I suppose in his sickness, he felt that we should be honored that he took so much time and care preparing before introducing himself. He must have felt so superior by having such complete control of our every move. How powerful and alive he must felt as it ultimately became an addiction, terrorizing victims for what seemed like an eternity, with him leaving, then returning, and leaving once more and returning yet again. As for me, I remember thinking in horror that my kids might wake up and find me dead. The terror was more than I could ever put into words. I won't elaborate on the details of the actual attack, as you will hear them over and over from so many others. Thankfully, my young children slept through the attack. As the sun came up, my son was able to get help by crawling out his bedroom window and running to the neighbor's home. I'm saddened with the thought that this event is part of my children's childhood memories. Afterward, my children and I stayed at a neighbor's home who was kind enough to take us in. Being concerned about being identified as a victim, I pulled myself together and returned to work after a couple of days. I told no one what happened except my supervisor. I recall overhearing coworkers commenting on the attack that they would not have allowed that to happen to them, which was very upsetting. In reality, when there are life and death consequences on the line, you never know what you would do until you are actually in that situation. Moving forward, I have never thought of myself as a victim, although it's part of my history. Although it took time and work, I did not let his temporary control over me control the outcome of my life. Today, I am blessed with a husband who is truly my best friend and a great children who mostly like me. My husband confided that he felt the need to say something on my behalf today, but in the truth, he's been there for me over 40 years. I feel fortunate that life has been good, except for a few bumps along the way. Lastly, I want to thank all who have worked countless hours on this case and never gave up the pursuit of the predator. Thank you for caring. As for D'Angelo, I feel my best revenge is to live my life. The monster has been unmasked and is no longer of any consequence. I am leaving him behind. The nightmare has ended. He is the one forever alone in the dark.
Thank you. Ms. Daly, also thank you for your dedication in this case as well.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. The following statement will be a little different from the rest. My mother is not a victim. Just a few years after the attack, my mother and father met. They gave birth to my brother. They gave birth to my brother and I. But rather than talk about what happened to her, we chose to use this time and address D'Angelo and the survivors. It's titled, My Mother's Gift. A box sits in front of you. My mother wrapped it herself. She always was the best wrapper at Christmas, don't you think? Would you like to open it? But first, just a couple quick words. What words would you choose and how would you arrange them in a way that makes sense to someone like him? Think for a moment. How do you capture the essence of pain and destruction this person has caused? What would you say, judge, bailiff? How do you capture that amount of destruction? Luckily, by and large, we have the luxury of not knowing a person like him, because for the most part, they don't exist. Maybe that's why I'm struggling to find the right words. I can use curse words and demonstrate my anger, but those actually don't really mean anything. Instead, I'll try to attempt the higher wire act of reasoning with him. One involves that navigating his life experience. By default, people are loving, caring, and genuinely take into account the feelings and well-being of others. The ability to see yourself in others is nature's truly gift to humanity. This is all made possible by consciousness. Consciousness is the foundation of the basis of moral agency, which is the ability to disseminate right from wrong. This is what separates us from wild animals and their behavior. What it must be to be like you. Thankfully, I will never know. What I do know is that you've managed to live a life not worth living. That's pretty hard to do. There's thousands of ways people seek meaning and purpose, and you didn't find one, just the illusion of one. Think about that for a moment. You've managed to live an entire life not worth living. Controlling other people, given the right circumstances, is likely the only times at which you felt alive. This isn't just some artful jab. Let me put this in perspective for you for just a moment. Think about all the bad people that live, that are alive today. Con artists that swindled the elderly out of their life savings, reserved for the final gift of inheritance, or say spouses lying to each other in court over a custody battle, or even fraudsters creating fake charities disguised as legitimate, who rob people of their own good. These are clearly some of society's worst people. Hell, we would gladly take these people every day of the week if the world wouldn't produce another morally bankrupt person like yourself. In a world where we strive to find meaning, you've managed to squander just about all of it. Thankfully, everyone other than you has this choice. In fact, many of you listening will exercise that freedom today. When I say we, everyone other than you can do this at a moment's notice. The ability to redefine what it is that you find importance, whether it be through relationships, political discourse, charity work, profound life experience. It is what it means to be yourself. All of which intrinsically serves the purpose of cultivating and reshaping the reality that serves the people of your community. We all have this voice inside of our head. Haven't you noticed? This voice slash conversation you have been having your entire life is long overdue for an audit. What has yours been telling you? Maybe we should ask, say, Robert, or maybe Deborah, or how about Charlene? Or maybe Lyman. Maybe we could ask Keith or Patrice. You know them, don't you? Since they are unavailable, we may be asked Manuela, Sherry, Gregory, or even Janelle. Maybe they can vouch for your sanity. The 13 people that you killed had a voice, not just the voice that the family members knew, but the voice inside of them that made them good people and everyone that they knew. You've been a witness to and subjected to your moral bankrupt voice and chose to do nothing to stop it. For this reason, I hold you particularly responsible. If you haven't noticed, this audit isn't going very well. Where have you been your entire life? Let me help you. Imagine flipping a regular coin and it lands on heads 1,000 times in a row. Must be a double-sided coin. No. You simply just didn't realize that tails exist. You have just incomplete evidence. This is what it must be to be like you. And this must be true. Otherwise, you couldn't fathom the notion of taking a life of your own. A lot of people might wish to carry out the death penalty themselves. Can't you see the sentence has already been given? You've been robbed of your entire life, yet you're too stupid to notice. You're the example of how someone could be alive, but never born. Think about that for a moment. You're the example of someone who could be alive, yet never born. Given the right opportunity, any of your 3 daughters would have smothered you at birth, only to be saved by the fear of resembling their own father. Your family has shut the door to you. Now the door is knocking. Death is upon you, and soon the sun will set, and with you in it. The only question remains, what is taking so long? Is it not obvious? It's because your life has not been worth taking. And now back to my opening sentence. There's a box in front of you. My mother has been waiting to give it to you for 43 years. Did you find out what was inside? Or perhaps who is inside? Do you see my mother's gift now? If you can only see just one hypothetical box, you've missed the point entirely. The answer's been right in front of you. Signed by my mother, the victims, and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ask the people, was there anybody else that wished to be heard as to count 15?
Yes, sir. If we could have a moment, we need to do a setup with the camera.
Absolutely. And is this also the last person scheduled before lunch?
Yes, sir. Last one.
Don't worry, mine will be shorter. I'm speaking today in loving support of my wife, Kathy. Although she was brutally attacked by Joseph D. D'Angelo in 1977, I can tell you that little Joe D'Angelo did not destroy her life as he tried to do to so many others. I did not meet Kathy till about a year after the attack, but I can attest to the fact that she is one of the strongest women I have ever known. While her encounter with Joe D'Angelo left an emotional scar, he did not destroy our lives, nor our lives together. We have chosen to make each day count for something better and to love, laugh, enjoy our lives. My wife, Kathy, has overcome her painful encounter with this monster. Our marriage is built on love, not hate. And we choose daily to look forward, not backward, at something that tragically happened over 40 years ago. Contrast that with the life of Joe D'Angelo, who spent his entire adult life lost in a murderous resentment because of a rejection from a college girlfriend. She saw something in him that told her to run, and she wisely did so. Poor little Joe could not let go of that rejection, and his bitterness allowed the devil himself to transform him into a monster, lost in his own dark demonic world. Kathy, on the other hand, suffered something far worse than a college romantic rejection. And when faced with the choice to become bitter, resentful, and hateful for what wrongfully and viciously happened to her, she instead chose to love, care for others every day of her life since that horrific encounter. He pathetically took his bitterness out on others, raping, torturing, murdering, ripping apart lives, families, and memories. He lived a lie as a police officer sworn to uphold the law. Instead, he chose to become lawless. And he lived a lie as a father and husband. In fact, D'Angelo's family are the last victims of the Golden State Killer. His 3 daughters, ex-wife, grandchildren are ones who will be tortured and terrorized by the man's actions for generations to come. If he has no remorse or guilt for the victims, he should look at what he's done to his family. The pain he's brought to his family will weigh on his soul the rest of his life. Despite their father's actions, I hope his family will rise and make something good of this tragedy like my wife and I have. We have chosen to close the door on the memory of this monster forever. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ho, is that all the survivors we have left until after lunch?
That is correct. The rest are scheduled for this afternoon, Your Honor.
All right,
Thank you.
folks, you never know how long these statements will generally take, and we tried to schedule them as most convenient to you all as we could, but we ran out of people to hear this morning. We're going to go ahead and take our lunch recess, and we'll see y'all back here at 1:30. Thank you.